absolutely love them. So yeah, I'd love to see that. It's also really cool when you read a legend and then you find the artifact that makes it real to you, in the sense of, like, say, Robert the Haunted Doll. If you don't know who that is, run a Google search on him. He's actually kind of the inspiration for Chucky, except he's real. And when you find that doll, you know, when you can actually sit there and look at it, or when you can actually reach out and touch it, that's what makes the stories, the folklore, so real to me. You know, it's fantastic.
So have you actually seen the haunted doll then, Robert?
I got an invitation to come up and have a private audience with him, which I intend to take advantage of as soon as I'm able to.
Oh.
But, yeah, I wrote an article about him for Dread Central, and right after I posted it, I get this message from the Martello Museum in Florida, and they said, "We really enjoyed the article. Anytime you'd like a private introduction, come on by." And so I can't wait to meet the little monster. Once again, this is a case of me probably doing something I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to do it anyway.
I don't know if all my listeners are familiar. Could you share the story of Robert the Haunted Doll?
Well, Robert was in Key West, Florida. There's a house called the Artist House, and that house used to be owned by a family whose last name was Otto. And they had one son. His name was Eugene, and they had a house full of serving staff. And the owners of the house were not particularly kind to their serving staff, which is really stupid when your serving staff is from Haiti and when they're well-versed in voodoo, or Vodun, actually. So before their last servant left, she made this doll, and she gave it to their son, and the son named him Robert. And everywhere that he went, the kid's actual name was Robert Eugene Otto, and he gave the doll his first name because that's how much he loved the doll. And he just went by Gene. But, so he carried the doll around with him everywhere, and he would say things like, "Well, Robert, you know, what do you think of that?" And then he would answer for him, "Well, I don't like that very much," you know, that kind of thing. And his parents thought, you know, "Oh, our wonderful, precocious, creative child." And that was until they found their first squirrel that had been ripped apart in the backyard. I don't know if you've ever actually tried to catch a squirrel, but they're fast. There's no way a 10-year-old boy is going to catch one. And the parents said, you know, they knew they didn't do it, so they thought, well, there's only one person left in the house, and it's Gene. So, Gene, why did you do this? He said, "I didn't." He said, "Robert did it." And Robert started doing other things. Gene started showing up for school with bruises on his arms and on his neck, and looked like he'd been fighting, and his teachers would ask him, they said, "Gene, have you been fighting?" He said, "No." They said, "Did your parents do this to you?" He said, "No." He said, "Robert did it." One night, Mrs. Otto was awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of her son screaming. And it sounded like his room was being torn apart. Her son was screaming, "No, Robert, no, Robert, stop, stop, Robert." And when she got to his room and threw the door open, his room had been just wrecked. And there was Eugene sitting up against the headboard of his bed, all curled up in a ball. Sitting at the foot of his bed was the doll. Eugene pointed at the doll and he said, "Mommy, Robert did it." His mom said, "All right, fine. I've had enough of this crap." She said, "I'm going to get rid of the doll." And he says, "No, Mommy. Robert says if you try to get rid of him, he'll hurt me. And if you try to get rid of him, he'll kill you." So she locked the doll in the attic. The only thing she could think to do. And for the rest of her life, she would walk every day, once a day, up and down those stairs to the attic and double-check the lock to make sure that that doll never got out. Until the day she died, she swore that she heard tiny feet walking around in that attic and heard somebody trying that lock from the other side. So Eugene went away to college, and while he was there, he met the girl of his dreams, and they got married, and they came back to find his mother was in poor health. When she died, she left the house and everything in it to him. and his new bride. And the first thing that he did was he went up to the attic and he got Robert. And he gave Robert the best room in the house. Now, think about that for a minute. The master bedroom in your house. The good room. The one with the bathroom in it. He gave it to a 2.5-foot tall doll. His wife was very upset. She said, this is our house. Are you insane? This is our house. This room belongs to us. He said, Robert doesn't like it when you talk to me like that. And he started acting more and more strange until one day Mrs. Otto laid down the law. She said, okay, that's it. Either the doll goes or I go. Oddly enough, he actually did love his wife. So he followed suit of his mother, but in his case, he spent $2,000 and he built a Robert-sized apartment in the attic. And it's still there. If you go there and you stay at the Artist House Museum, it's a bed and breakfast now. If you go there and go up into the attic, you'll see a little tiny room with little tiny chairs and a little tiny bed and even a little tiny sink. And that's where Robert stayed. And Eugene, right after he locked the doll up, Eugene started losing his mind. And we say starting to with a knowing nod and wink because basically he was talking to a doll. But as he's laying there in his bed, he would start raving, Robert wants out, Robert's going to kill you, Robert wants out. And when he finally died, his wife spent a good deal of time walking up and down those stairs checking to make sure that Robert did not get out. So we flash forward a few years, and the house gets sold to a family that had a little girl. And no one's really sure how she got into the attic because it was locked and there was no key. But she came downstairs carrying a very strange doll, whom she named Robert. And when they asked her, why did you name him Robert? She said, I didn't. She said, that's what he told me his name was. And it wasn't long before he started telling her other things, too. Things like, your mom and dad don't love you, right? I can help you get rid of them. You'd be better off if they were dead. And she started showing up for school with bruises on her arms and her legs and on her neck. And they said the same questions to her. Have you been fighting? No. Did your parents do this to you? No. Robert did it. And that woman is still alive. And to this day, she vehemently says that doll tortured her while she was growing up. So today, Robert actually lives in the West Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. He looks like kind of a sailor. He looks like kind of a monkey in a sailor suit. Has his own little stuffed tiger that sits with him. And the problem is they keep finding him out of his case. And occasionally they find dirt on the bottoms of his shoes, like he's been running around on the floor. So, that's Robert. He's very real. And if anybody wants to know more about him or see a picture of him, just do a quick Google search for Robert the Haunted Doll. He'll pop up.
Oh, yeah. And now, are you aware now that they're making, like, other little Robert dolls?
That doesn't surprise me. I mean,
I
can't believe they would do that, but yeah, that doesn't. It's funny, they ran an MRI on him because, he's such an old piece of Americana art, is what they refer to him as.
Yeah.
They ran an MRI on the doll, and they found something very interesting. Right where a human being's heart would be, there's a bag that's full of 5 stones, which in the Vodun tradition are called soul stones.
Oof.
Yeah, kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, Robert, I remember the first time I heard about Robert, and I was pretty much blown away by that. And the fact that, here's this, he's incredibly well preserved, from what I can gather.
His hair, they've been in the past 5 years, they've been saying that the activity around Robert has actually diminished. And it's weird because as the activity diminishes, his hair's actually been changing color. His hair's been turning white. And they're not sure if they can equate that with him with, I don't want to say he's dying, but if maybe he's cycling down or something. They don't know. But yeah, that's one of those interesting things that's been happening.
That is interesting. They're almost like, yeah, that's because you look at it and you're thinking this doll is, I don't know, over 100 years old or close to it.
Yeah,
and
it's as twisted as it sounds. Granted, the thing tortures children. Okay, I got that. But as twisted as it sounds, I'm really upset that his whatever he has is diminishing. I kind of feel sorry for the little guy. Because think of what we could learn from something like that. If you could ever actually prove it, think of what we could learn from it.
I'll tell you. I mean, you said it's most likely the inspiration for Chucky. I don't know if in fact it is. And when you were talking about it, it actually kind of somewhat reminded me of the movie Pin. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Well, that's one of those things that the producers have never confirmed nor denied. You say, what about the connection between Robert the Doll and Chucky? And they'll be like, oh yeah, we knew about Robert. And they just leave it at that. So